Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is AJ and I've always played around with the idea of starting a channel about exploring Christian topics, especially Christian spirituality, discipleship, spiritual practices, and everything else related to those topics. And I figured what better time to start than now. I'm just going to dive into it and see what happens. If you're interested, I hope you'll subscribe and follow along with things that I'm talking about and maybe respond and join in on the conversation as well. So my idea was to go through a text, or actually, a collection of texts involving Christian topics, Christian spirituality, and discipleship. And this one seemed really good to me, so I hope I'm not breaking any kind of copyright. I don't intend to make any kind of money off this, so let's see how it goes. First text is by C.S. Lewis. And it is from Mere Christianity, excerpt from that book. And so I'll read it, go through the questions, a few of the questions at the end, and just discuss my thoughts and why I think this is important. Maybe other things will come up, as well, why this interests me, especially. So, starting with the text. The ordinary idea which we all have before we became Christians is this. We take as the starting point our ordinary self with its various desires and interests. Then we admit that something else, call it morality or decent behavior or the good of society, has claims on this self, claims which interfere with its own desires. What we mean by being good is giving in to those claims. Some of these things the ordinary self wanted to do turn out to be what we call wrong. Well, we must give them up. Other things turn out to be what we call right. Well, we shall have to do them. But we are hoping all the time that when all the demands have been met, the poor natural self will still have some chance and some time to get on with its own life and to do what it likes. In fact, we are very like an honest man paying his taxes. He pays them all right, but he does hope that there will be enough left over for him to live on, because we are still taking our natural self as the starting point. As long as we are thinking that way, one or other of the two results is likely to follow. Either we give up trying to be good, or else we become very unhappy indeed. For make no mistake, if you are really going to try to meet all the demands made on the natural self, it will not have enough left over to live on. The more you obey your conscience, the more your conscience will demand of you. And your natural self, which is thus being starved and hampered and worried at every turn, will get angrier and angrier. In the end, you will either give up trying to be good, or else become one of those people who, as they say, lives for others, but always in a discontented, grumbling way, always wondering why the others do not notice it more, and always making a martyr of yourself. And once you have become that, you will be a far greater pest to anyone who has to live with you than you would have been if you had remained frankly selfish. The Christian way is different, harder and easier. Christ says, "Give me all. I don't want so much of your time, so much of your money, and so much of your work. I want you. I have not come to torment your natural self, but to kill it. No half measures are any good. I don't want to cut off a branch here and a branch there. I want to have the whole tree down. Hand over the whole natural self, all the desires which you think innocent as well as the ones you think wicked, the whole outfit. I will give you a new self instead. In fact, I will give you myself. My own will shall become yours. Both harder and easier than what we are all trying to do." You have noticed, I expect, that Christ himself sometimes describes the Christian way as very hard, sometimes as very easy. He says, "Take up your cross." In other words, it is like going to be beaten to death in a concentration camp. Next minute he says, "My yoke is easy and my burden is light." He means both, and one can just see why both are true. the most dangerous thing. Teachers will tell you that the laziest boy in the class is one who works the hardest in the end. They mean this. If you give two boys, say, a proposition in geometry to do, the one who is prepared to take trouble will try to understand it. The lazy boy will learn it by heart because for the moment that needs less effort. But 6 months later, when they are preparing for the exam, the lazy boy is doing hours and hours of miserable drudgery over things the other boy understands and positively enjoys in a few minutes. Laziness means more work in the long run. Or look at it this way, in a battle or in a mountain climbing, there is often one thing which it takes a lot of pluck to do, but it is also in the long run the safest thing to do. If you funk it, you will find yourself hours later in far worse danger. The cowardly thing is also the most dangerous thing. It is like that here. The terrible thing, the almost impossible thing, is to hand over your whole self, all your wishes and precautions, to Christ. But it is far easier than what we are trying to do. For what we are trying to do is remain what we call ourselves, to keep personal happiness as our great aim in life and yet at the same time be good. We are all trying to let our mind and heart go their own way, centered on money or pleasure or ambition, and hoping in spite of this to behave honestly and chastely and humbly. And that is exactly what Christ warned us you could not do. As he said, a thistle cannot produce figs. If I am a field that contains nothing but grass seed, I cannot produce wheat. Cutting the grass may keep it short, but I shall still produce grass and no wheat. If I want to produce wheat, the change must go deeper than the surface. I must be plowed up and resown. That is why the real problem of the Christian life comes when people do not usually look for it. It comes at the very moment you wake up each morning. All your wishes and hopes for the day rush at you like wild animals, and the first job each morning consists simply in shoving them all back and listening to the other voice, taking that other point of view, letting that other larger, stronger, quieter life come flowing in, and so on all day. Standing back from all your natural fussings and frettings, coming in and out of the wind. We can only do it for moments at first, but from those moments, the new sort of life will be spreading through our system because now we are letting Him work at the right part of us. It is the difference between paint, which is merely laid on the surface, and a dye or stain, which soaks right through. He never talked vague, idealistic gas. When he said, "Be perfect," he meant it. He meant that we must go in for the full treatment. It is hard, but the sort of compromise we are all hankering after is harder. In fact, it is impossible. It may be hard for an egg to turn into a bird. It would be a jolly sight harder for it to learn to fly while remaining an egg. We are like eggs at present, and you cannot go on indefinitely being just an ordinary decent egg. We must be hatched or go bad. May I come back to what I said before? This is the whole of Christianity. There is nothing else. It is so easy to get muddled about that. It is easy to think that the church has a lot of different objects: education, building, missions, holding services. Just as it is easy to think the state has a lot of different objects, military, political, economic, and whatnot. But in a way, things are much simpler than that. The state exists simply to protect the ordinary happiness of human beings in this life. A husband and wife chatting over a fire, a couple of friends having a game of darts in a pub, a man reading a book in his room or digging in his own garden. That is what the state is there for. And unless they are helping to increase and prolong and protect such moments, all the laws, parliaments, armies, courts, police, economics, etc. are simply a waste of time. In the same way, the church exists for nothing else but to draw men to Christ, to make them little Christ. If they are not doing that, all the cathedrals, clergy, missions, sermons, even the Bible itself are simply a waste of time. God became man for no other purpose. It is even doubtful, whether the whole universe was created for any other purpose. It says in the Bible that the whole universe was made for Christ and that everything is to be gathered together in Him. I do not suppose any of us can understand how this will happen as regards the whole universe. We do not know what, if anything, lives in the parts of it that are millions of miles from this earth. Even on this earth, we do not know how it applies to things other than men. After all, that is what you would expect. We have been shown the plan only so far as it concerns ourselves. But we have been told is how we can be drawn to Christ, how we can be drawn into Christ, can become part of that wonderful present which the young prince of the universe wants to offer his father. That present which is himself and therefore is us in him. It is the only thing we are made for, and there are strange, exciting hints in the Bible that when we are drawn in, a great many other things in nature will begin to come right. The bad dream will be over. It will be morning. There's also a Bible reflection here from Luke 14:25-33. Now large crowds were traveling with him, and he turned and said to them, "Whoever comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brother and sisters, yes, and even life itself, cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not carry the cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not first sit down and estimate the cost, to see whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it will begin to ridicule him, saying, 'This fellow began to build and was not able to finish.' Or what king going out to wage war against another king will not sit down first and consider whether he is able with 10,000 to oppose the one who comes against him with 20,000? If he cannot, then, while the other is still far away, he sends a delegation and asks for the terms of peace. Therefore, none of you can become my disciple if you do not give up all your possessions." Reflection questions now. First one, C.S. Lewis stresses the need to give all areas of our lives to God. What do you find most difficult about giving all to God? Well, I think he points out in the very beginning the idea that you can hold on to some idea of the good that is outside of Christ, right? Maybe some kind of idea of the good life, and still be able to pursue the Christian life, pursue Christ, while still having that aim, right? I think it could be the same for many of us. The idea of a total surrender, that even if it costs me everything, my idea of what is good in this life, even my life itself, that's the difficult thing, right? And I think he's right. There's a lot of people probably fooling themselves, thinking, "Hey, I'm living the Christian life. I've given myself to Christ," but are they really pursuing some other good, and keeping the veneer of Christianity, keeping up pretenses, you might say? Or have they truly surrendered? It's a total surrender, right? And I think he's right. Christ wants everything. And it's both the easiest thing one could do and also the hardest. Number 2, describe how you would feel if Jesus came to you and spoke the words Lewis quotes in section 3. Christ says, "Give me all." Let's take a look at it. Christ says, "Give me all. I don't want so much of your time, so much of your money, and so much of your work. I want you. I have not come to torment your natural self, but to kill it. No half measures are any good. I don't want to cut off a branch here and there. I want to have the whole tree down. Hand over the whole natural self. all the desires which you think innocent as well as the ones you think wicked, the whole outfit. I will give you a new self instead. In fact, I will give you myself. My own will shall become yours. If Christ himself were to present those words to me, as it says in the question here, how would I feel? I would feel overwhelmed at first with the realization of, well, this demands everything from me. But that last part where he says, I will give you a new self. Indeed, I will give you myself, right? My will become yours. On the front end, right, the anxiety and fear of I'm giving up everything, right? Everything that the world has to offer me, everything that I think is good in the world, everything that I would want to pursue or build on my own. It seems overwhelming, like I can't do that. What if I fail? But then realizing it's not hinging upon me, right? It's incredibly freeing when Christ says, I will give you myself. My will become yours. I will do it in and through you. It's not you doing it. It's me doing it within you. It's just like Paul tells us, that God works within us to will and to do of his good pleasure. So the anxiety and fear on the front end, but on the back end, knowing that if Christ is working within me to will and to do, I would feel free. Third question. According to Lewis, the hardest road we can take in life is the one that appears easiest, like the boy who waits until the end of the semester to cram for the test. How have your experiences confirmed or denied this claim? Yeah, it's like the false advertising, right? Like, oh, just take this pill, or here's your easy remedy, here's your easy fix, and it'll solve this issue that you have. But it's false, right? Like you're not solving anything truly in the moment. It's maybe a patch, maybe a false fix, and in the end, it creates much more pain, heartache, or work, or even creates things that you can't even recover from. I like cars, so the example that I think of is, let's say the engine blew a head gasket, right? Which is, a detrimental thing to a car engine. And the easy fix that you can find at any auto parts store is some of the sludge that you can pour into the engine coolant, the radiator. Stop leak, right? I think that's what it's called. And yeah, it might sludge up the internals of the engine enough to where it's not going to be leaking coolant, but it's going to ruin your coolant system. It's going to sludge up your engine, at least the coolant passages. It might work for a while, it might hold, it might start leaking again and you have more problems. It's a fix for the moment, but down the line, if you want to create or make the real repair to your engine, it's going to create more problems in the long run. So I can see that, by taking the easy way, the easy fix, you're sludging up, those inner passages of yourself, and you're creating more heartache and work in the long run. When if you just do the hard work at the forefront, whether you could fix the engine yourself, you rip it apart, you tear up the heads, and put a new head gasket, get your heads resurfaced, put everything back together. Hard. Just do it. If you have the know-how, still your time and effort and money. You pay someone else to do it. I mean, that's your work and your resources going to that. It's a pain, right? It's pain either way, but you would have fixed the issue from the get-go and maybe salvaged your engine instead of making it worse. Maybe the soul is kind of the same way, like, are you going to sludge it up with easy fixes, or are you going to do the hard work, rip up what needs to be ripped up, replace what needs to be replaced, put it all back together, and maybe you're much stronger in the long run. So I think Lewis's claim, is confirmed, at least by my knowledge and experience of car engines. Number 4, the pursuit of personal happiness by being morally good, says Lewis, ends in frustration. What is his reasoning behind this? Do you agree or disagree? You can turn back. I think that was towards the beginning. He says, but we are hoping all the time that when all the demands have been met, the poor natural self will still have some chance and some time to get on with its own life and to do what it likes. In fact, we are very like an honest man paying his taxes. He pays them all right, but he does hope that there will be enough left over for him to live on. A little further down, it says, we will either give up trying to be good, or we will become very unhappy indeed. We will give up trying to be good, or else become one of those people who, as they say, lives for others but is always discontented. So I think what he's saying is that when you try to do good on your own merits, in your own natural self, you'll either give up, right? Because it's never something that you can meet, right? Your conscience will always convict you, right? You can never be good enough. Or else you'll be that person that lives for others and is miserable and discontented. So either way, there's frustration and discontent at the end of both outcomes. You're not going to find true happiness or blessedness, which is what you would find if you surrender yourself to Christ. And I think this is just proven by universal human experience. I mean, without surrendering ourselves over to God, and we believe as I believe the ultimate revelation of God is in Christ Jesus, all other roads lead to misery and discontent. The Bible says, taste and see that the Lord is good, right? So if this can be experienced, if one can truly surrender to Christ and find real happiness, they taste and they see that he is good. Well, that would be the proof, right? It's like, I've tried everything else, I'm left miserable and bitter, but I've surrendered to Jesus, and I find the promised land in him, right? He is the promised land. He is the one flowing with milk and honey. We taste of him, and we find happiness and blessedness. Even for those who surrender to him, when we still try to go back, right? We still try to head back to Egypt, flee the promised land, or at least flee our journey on the way to the promised land, right? We just are reaping for ourselves misery and bitterness again, and if we manage to go all the way back, we're in slavery and bondage. So what is it about slavery and bondage that's so appealing to us, right? Well, the pleasure in the moment, but the pleasure that turns bitter? Or do we pursue the hard way of going through the wilderness to the promised land, the arduous way, the narrow way, but finding true blessedness, right, in Jesus? So I think that it's proven experientially. And of course, someone could argue against this, right? But it truly comes down to the individual. What is their choice? What are you going to do with Jesus? The ultimate question. And last question here in the end of the text. In Luke 14:25 through 33, Jesus encourages those who would follow him to count the cost of being his disciples. What has being a Christian cost you? It's probably a super personal question. I'll comment on, what it did cost the early believers, right? I mean, it cost them their life, right? They truly believed in who Jesus was and what he said, to the point that they were willing to give up this life completely. That's the ultimate cost. You could say for those of us who don't pay that ultimate price, right? Are we dying to ourselves? Are we dying to this life? Are we dying to our idea of the good? Are we dying to the pursuit of material things? Are we dying to our own pride, our own lusts, it's very possible for, like Lewis says, for people to have some idea of the good, but to dress that up with like this Christian veneer. Have we truly surrendered all? What has Christianity or being a Christian cost you? What does it cost me? That's a hugely personal question, and I'll leave it up to us as individuals to answer that and parse it out. I would just encourage you, if you've listened this far, consider that truly for yourself. And I hope to interact with you further, and I hope you'll listen to or watch the other videos that I do. Good day to you.